On our grassroots citizen panel, and just before the break, we were talking about President Obama's support, if you will, of marijuana, legalizing marijuana, support for it not being harmful. And our panel here has had some pretty emotional and strong comments on it. Let's go to Jeff Olson. Jeff, Occupy leader, political activist. You want to wrap up some comments on that?
Sure, Rick. Yeah, I wanted to mention, I think I'm with the president on this one. I know that personally I make better decisions under the influence of cannabis than I do, halfway into if you belt into a bottle of whiskey. And I agree with your other panelists that cannabis is a gateway drug, but not for the same reasons maybe that they think so. It is a gateway drug because once you realize that they were lying to you about weed, that it's not the devil weed, it's not going to make you take an axe to your family, it's not going to make you do all the, go crazy. Once you realize that you were lied to about cannabis control, then it gives you permission to try other drugs on the assumption that you've been lied to about those as well. And that is dangerous.
Larry, you want to comment on what you just heard?
Well, I disagree. At first, I don't think you make good decisions either drunk or high. So, sober is probably the right way to go with that one. For me, it's very emotional. And it goes back to family. And I've had a brother die with a needle sticking out of his arm who started smoking weed. And I've had another brother who did hard time for running drugs up from Mexico, who's paid his debt and he's doing well. And I'm really proud of his recovery. But then again, first step of that train wreck has always been a bag of weed. And do we need one more vice? I don't think so.
I want to come back because Jeff, I think I want to wrap up with a comment here. What's interesting about what you just said, even former Democratic congressional leader Patrick Kennedy has come out and said this president is wrong. He said that his exact words were marijuana today is much stronger, much more dangerous, not the same marijuana the president toked as a kid. He went on to say that that scientifically is wrong and that is dangerous what the president is advocating. And then the president's White House medical advisor said the scientific facts don't bear the president out. But you're disagreeing with Kennedy and the medical advisor to the White House.
Well, I think it may be time for a new medical advisor to the president. I'm not sure that that we really need to get hysterical over cannabis control at this point.
You had a quick comment. Someone said we don't need another vice. I think it was you, Larry.
Yes, sir.
It's interesting. It was Patrick Kennedy who said, look, do we really want to have big marijuana, big tobacco, and big alcohol in America? So it's interesting you said that. Audrey, I think you want to say something.
Yeah, Rick, I think it's important. I think you guys are hitting on a great point that people understand the dangers of it and just how horrific it can be. And I think that's huge that we start educating on that and that this information comes forward. And I think then having a separate discussion on whether or not it should be illegal with the states or federally and who gets involved with that would be a separate discussion.
Well, one thing that is certain, the Super Bowl this year can also be called a pot bowl.
That's true.
Denver versus
Go Seahawks.
Rick, there is something important here, and Jeff's on it too. There are bigger fish to fry.
I didn't hear you.
There are bigger fish to fry. I mean, if you look at the threat to national security emboldened by our debt, okay, Colorado's made pot free. Colorado, don't do that. Let's get our focus back where it needs to be. We don't need these political distractions keeping our eye off the ball.
Right. All right. Someone said the big lie, I think it was you, Jeff Olson, earlier. Let's talk about more bigger lies. We'll shift gears and talk about the NSA, but let's watch this video first.
The real question here is, what do they do with this information that they collect that does not have anything to do with al-Qaeda? And we're going to trust the president and the vice president of the United States that they're doing the right thing. Don't count me in on that.
I will provide our intelligence and law enforcement agencies with the tools they need to track and take out the terrorists without undermining our Constitution and our freedom. That means no more illegal wiretapping of American citizens. No more national security letters to spy on citizens who are not suspected of a crime.
Liar, liar, pants on fire. Let's start with Larry Wilske. You're the congressional candidate. We watched candidate Joe Biden in 2006 say one thing. We watched President Obama, candidate, say one thing. And we watched President Obama, the president, do another.
We're pretty clean on needing warrants for search and seizure. And that's pretty constitutional, if I remember correctly. We should keep that, and we should embolden that. Now, there are warrants that can be done with classification, levels of classification don't need to be public knowledge. But let's keep that practice up. Overstepping that, that's a road to some real train wrecks.
Let's go to Jeff Olson. Jeff, I have a feeling you're an Occupy leader, Occupy supporter. I have a feeling this is an issue where the left and the right agree on.
I think you're right. Yeah, this is not the president that I voted for. This is more like Richard Milhouse Obama or George W. Barack. I don't
know about George W. Bush with this.
This kind of program started under W. So I expected the president to shut this down and to respect the Fourth Amendment. And
I don't think it was warrantless searches, though.
Right, but George W. insisted on warrants. So there's a judicial process.
Yeah,
well, then God bless him, because I'm a big fan of the Fourth Amendment, and this is the same reason that I was shocked to come to California and be stopped by drunk driving checkpoints. I mean, how come you're a suspect how could you possibly be a suspect in a crime just for driving down a certain stretch of road at night? My home state, Oregon, drunk driving checkpoints are not legal. They're unconstitutional. You're not a suspect in a crime just for. And it's the same thing with the wiretapping telephones. I can't possibly be considered a suspect in a crime
that hasn't been committed
just for talking on my cell phone or just for driving down a certain street at 2 in the morning.
Right.
I mean, I don't.
Andrea, what I find interesting about your take is that you're about to give us is that you run I Am Tomorrow, founder. It talks to millennials, and the poll numbers show that millennials are really kind of who supported Barack Obama in strong, overwhelming numbers, are being turned off by being spied upon on their iPhone.
Absolutely. This is just a growing number of Americans all across the country, millennials and not millennials, who really value their privacy, and we're seeing this happen more and more. And I think that when there is a warrant, it's constitutional, and when there's not, we recognize that. And I think it's really encouraging to see people from both sides of the aisle joining in on this issue and really protecting the Fourth Amendment.
And it's interesting, as you say, Andrea, seeing people on both sides of the aisle agreeing, and what's almost bizarre is seeing people on the extreme right agreeing with Obama on this.
It's pretty wild. To play devil's advocate for a moment, though, and to parody what we've heard from Senator Feinstein and others, while it's shocking to think that someone's listening in on my phone conversations, I also haven't been on a hijacked plane lately.
Yeah,
that's a balance with security, but I think that they can still keep us secure with warrants. And I'm not sure, like you said, there is highly classified warrants as well. And I know that Americans do value their security, but they also value their privacy.
You want to talk about the president lying. He comes out and says we need warrantless searches, and then he calls Al-Qaeda a JV basketball team? What's up with that? We're about out of time. Keep it real brief and give everyone sort of a last-minute wrap-up. We'll start with Larry. You're running for Congress here in California. You're going against the established incumbent Democrat Susan Davis. Big money, big politics you're going against. Anything you want to say?
Yes, sir. I am going against the elite rich left, and that is a problem set. But the thing is, this is my neighborhood. It's where I grew up. And after 30 years of leadership development in the SEAL teams, which is a lot more than just shoot, move, and communicate, it's a lot of diplomacy as well. It's a great service. I'm very proud of my service, and this is the next natural service to my country. And I don't think the incumbent is really serving her country as much as she is her party. And you look at her voting record, and I would employ everybody to look at her voting record, and you'll see Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, and Susan Davis about 99% in agreement with one another. To agree with anybody that much is unhealthy.
Right.
And that means she's surrounded herself by a staff that doesn't give her good decision support or the debate to make healthy decisions in representing the 53rd District. Me, it's my neighborhood. I grew up there. So I think I'll get a good bit of back and forth.
Larry, we're about out of time. Jeff, we're about out of time. I want to ask you a quick question.
Yes, sir.
A lot of people ask whether or not the Tea Party will rear its influential head in 2014. Let me ask about the Occupy movement. We saw a lot of it from 2012, I believe it was. There was a 10. I can't recall right now. What do you think 2014?
I think a lot of the folks that were mobilized have found other ways to express their political opinions. I don't see us in the street so much. I see a lot of folks working on stuff like the financial transactions tax, the Robinhood tax. Check out robinhoodtax.com. Learn more about how we can close the loophole that allows B of A and ExxonMobil to not pay any taxes. And,
this is from a guy who performs better under cannabis. Any final comments, Andrea?
Well, I think that right now, all across the nation, people are coming together from both sides of the aisle. I think this is just one example of that, and really standing up for constitutional principles.
Spoken like a true optimist. I'm not quite that optimistic, but we did have an example of it here today.
Yes, absolutely.
All
Little
right,
by little.
that's our grassrootsism panel. I want to thank Jeff Olson from Occupy. I want to thank Larry Wilske, retired Navy SEAL, running for Congress in California's 53rd District, and Andrea Taylor, founder, CEO of I Am Tomorrow. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
All right, I want to thank you, our viewers, for watching. We're right back at you again tomorrow night, same time. And now I leave you with our Amato Mio moment of the day.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them blue.